And I think we do that a lot of times with our dreams and our goals. We bury them for too long and we don't ever take that first step. We keep thinking that, well, I just need to wait for the right time. The right time is today.
Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat of Take the Doughnut, here to help you get inspiration and get donuts. I'm a motivational keynote speaker, but today I'm bringing you a Take the Doughnut interview with the one and only Trey Tucker. And let me tell you a little bit about him. Trey of Rugged Counseling is a speaker and licensed therapist who engages in conversations about mental health without the fluff. And that's a very like what's on your website way to explain what he does. But if you listen to any of his content, which you should, it really breaks down mental health discussions in a way that feels accessible and new, even if you've been consuming a lot of information on that subject. So I am so excited to talk with you today, Trey. Thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you. I'm excited. I have to say, I'm a little mad at you already because the title of your show is already making me hungry and I have to do cardio after this. So the whole idea of donuts and cardio, it's just got me all frazzled.
And here I am making you look at them with my background all the time. Oh my goodness. Well, I guess let's start off with the question of what's your favorite donut, just to keep it on the painful subject for another moment. What is your
May as
favorite
well.
donut?
Yeah, I tell my clients, hey, you got to lean into the discomfort. So let's lean into the discomfort of the temptation of these donuts. My favorite one is Boston cream or Bavarian cream. And I don't know how many people that come on your show say that one. I feel like it may not be as common of an answer. Is that?
Not as common, no.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know why. I've always loved it. I feel like I don't even know what Bavarian cream is, to be honest. So I feel like it's banana pudding. And if I just kind of go with that in my mind, it's like combining two awesome worlds into one, banana pudding and a donut and some chocolate. So that makes three. I'm bad at math, but I've always loved that ever since I was a kid. And so even now, whatever excuse I can get, if the Krispy Kreme light is on for the hot donuts, I'm pulling in, see if they got one that's hot. I don't know if Dunkin's ever really hot donuts, but I'll get them as a second choice. But now the homemade donuts that are Bavarian cream, I could put away some of those things. I'd be about 400 pounds in the next 2 weeks if somebody put some fresh ones in front of me.
Okay, so we all know Trey's weakness now. This is it. This is the thing, right? Like
Exactly.
don't come to the gym with a box of Bavarian cream donuts because there will be
No,
problems.
exactly. I will fight somebody if they try to take it.
Oh my gosh. So, I just said a little bit about who you are up front, but I'm sure there's lots more to know. So tell us more about yourself. What should we know about you?
Yeah, I'm a therapist, like you said, but honestly, I didn't get into the therapy world until kind of later in life. I've started out in the corporate world, worked in marketing. Uh, I had a great time and I learned a lot. But one of the things I learned was that I wasn't really wired for that. It wasn't something that fulfilled me. It was just simply a job. And I was thankful for that job, but I also had this hunger I don't know, to make more of an impact in a face-to-face kind of way. And so fast forward a little bit, I work in the education world as well for a while, and people both in that job and just in day-to-day life conversations, they would start just coming up to me and opening up and sharing things that I wasn't even really trying to get them to share. And that started way back, I think when I was maybe in fourth or fifth grade is when I noticed that first. I didn't know what to do with it back then. I just kind of I didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing or whatever, but it kept happening over and over through the years. And around 2011, I guess, I finally decided, okay, I've got a full-time job as it is, but I've just got this hunger to help people with their thoughts, with their emotions, but mainly to help them fully become the person that they were created to be. And all the influences on me growing up had kind of that angle to them. They really helped me figure out some of my thinking, some of my emotions, helped me overcome some challenges. And so I thought, well, I'm kind of equipped already by them. Why don't I pass along what was poured into me? And lo and behold, I go into the master's program for counseling, which is a grueling program. It's probably, I think it took me 5 years because I was going part-time due to the job that I had. And yeah, 5, maybe even 6 years. And then boom, I hit the ground running, and it's been a blast ever since. I it's always an honor to get to walk with somebody through whatever it is they want to walk through. And the way I kind of look at therapy is it's two different things. It's like an oil change for your brain. That's how I explain it to guys, because we guys tend to not really want to talk mental health or emotions too much. But you wouldn't drive your car around for 2 or 3 years without changing the oil. So you got to come in and clear out some of the sludge and then put in some new oil. Same thing with therapy. It's hopefully maintenance. If you're waiting until some catastrophe breaks down or some engine blows up, then it's going to take a lot longer. But the other way I look at it is kind of walking your way out of a forest, where if you try to walk by yourself, you probably will make it eventually. But if you walk with somebody who's been in that forest before, you're going to come out not just faster, but also have an idea of how to take somebody else maybe through the same thing that might be struggling with what you have in the future. But the key is I don't ever tell somebody what to do. If we're walking out of the forest together, I'm walking shoulder to shoulder with them, helping them figure things out rather than just leading them and having them follow me from behind, because then they just turn into a dependent and they never learn confidence and independence on their own. So, really long version of kind of what I get to do on a day-to-day basis.
I think that's a great way to break it down and to show that you really can have different visuals to give people or different ideas to give people to find an entry point, depending on who they are and what they need. And, when you were saying that, like basically people your whole life, even since grade school, have been leaning on you in this way, I just think it's so interesting that there are people who can understand a thing about you before you understand it yourself. Like they recognize something in you
That's good.
about you being a safe space, or sometimes that happens where people recognize a skill set, and it takes a minute to see it constantly reflected to you before you go, you know what, you're onto something here. And it sounds like you had that process, where maybe it took a second, but then you realized the pattern.
Yeah, and I love how you said it. That it took other people to understand what was kind of wired into me before I understood it. And yeah, one thing I've learned very quickly early on is that we all need a safe person, at least a safe person, and a safe place to let it all hang out, to get vulnerable, and to give somebody the gift of the real us. So I just that always was the most fulfilling type of conversation with me. So it kind of became addictive over time.
Mm. So beautifully said. Well, we started up front by calling this a Take the Donut interview, and some of you may be wondering, what does that mean? So, take the donut for me is an expression that is the same as carpe diem. It comes from this strange thing that happened to me in college, where I left a literal donut on the table, but it became an object lesson for me and what it looks like to leave opportunity on the table. And so I don't want to do that anymore. I want to take the donut, and I'll link a video here for those who want to see the full story on that. But this conversation is all about, what do you do with opportunity? How do you go after goals? What does that look like practically speaking? And so I want to start with this question for you. How are you with going after goals? What is that process like for you in general?
Unfortunately for me, I have to get in enough pain to really get motivated. And so I learned this, I think it was maybe freshman year of college, and I did not work out at all. I was just a skinny little dude. I'd have to run around in the shower to get fully wet. It was basically a little stick figure. And somebody called me out on it one time. It was another guy said, "Look, how skinny are you?" And I thought, dang, that hurt. I didn't show it because we gotta keep that shield up. Although now I've learned better, but that hurt so much that I just thought, okay, I'm gonna do something about this. I'm gonna make a plan. But before I make a plan, I gotta figure out why I'm gonna do this, and I gotta figure out what I want the finish line to look like. So, long story short, I got those answers to those questions for that particular season, but that kind of still has become my process now, is figure out why am I going to do this, And then what do I want to look like, feel like, where do I want to be? In other words, what's my vision for how this hill is going to look once I've peaked the top of that hill? And usually, I mean, I'm human like the rest of us, but usually when I have a really clear idea of those things, the why and the vision, I can typically stay relatively motivated.
Those sound like two very simple questions to ask.
Mhm.
And in practice, it probably takes a minute to wade through your answers to that.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one thing that helps me is I love thinking about purpose. Why am I alive? Why am I in the room I'm in the moment? Why am I talking to the person that I'm talking to? You know, from the big moments down to the small, what impact can I make right here? And if I know my purpose overall for being alive, then it's easier to find out my purpose for whatever situation I find myself in. And then when I have a goal related to one of those, I can kind of fit it under that umbrella of purpose a little easier. I can find the answers to why and how do I want it to look.
Mm. So once you've started on the journey, you've answered those questions and now you're moving forward. What keeps you motivated on the way?
So keeping that visual or that vision in my head, but also I need visual reminders. So if let's say I have a I don't know weight loss goal, I have in the past I have printed out a color picture of a disgusting blob of fat. And so I put it on the refrigerator so that every time I open that door of the fridge to eat some food, I have to confront I have to confront this potential stuff that could end up in or on my body. So I need something visual. Sometimes I'll put like an index card on the dash of my car, anything to keep it in the front of my brain. But the thing that helps me even more is actually talking about my goals with people that I trust. Because I've found if I just keep it to myself, they're probably going to die. But if I have a conversation with somebody and hear from them, and maybe they've gone through something similar and achieved something similar, it just gets me more fired up and maybe even gives me some ideas of how to better reach my goals. But some people, the opposite, though. Some people, they feel like if they start talking about their goals out loud, they lose some of that energy. They feel like they've kind of already done it if they've talked about it. But for me, I've got to have that back and forth relational component.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about challenges. A lot of goals, a lot of opportunities, they take time to realize them. And are there any particular types of challenges that just seem to keep coming up for you? It's, maybe a specific brand of challenge that just seems to be your Achilles heel, no matter what you're doing.
There's so many challenges. I'm trying to figure out which one is wants to narrow in on. um, for me, um, when it comes to any sort of relational dynamic, whether it's romantic, friendship, family, whatever, I I'm an introvert, and so a lot of what goes on in my brain happens under the surface, and I don't verbalize a ton of it. I don't do it on purpose. It's just kind of how my brain works. I tend to process inside rather than process externally, and my a lot of times the pitfall is I will think something and not express it, and then looking back, it could have saved either some conflict or at least save some time. But I'm having to constantly remind myself, say this stuff out loud, like be a little more assertive with what you're thinking, what you're feeling, whatever problem you're kind of work through in your own head. But that continues to trip me up in a relational dynamic.
Mm. I'm introverted too, and people are often surprised by that. I think I'm guessing you often get people surprised by you saying that you're introverted because of how much you're kind of out there, but it makes
Right.
a lot of sense to me that you kind of got this is the, you don't have to do small talk when you're doing content.
Yes.
Unless
Yes.
you're doing what I'm doing right now. But I think it's so interesting that there's so much depth under the surface and how much you've been thinking about things. But you're right. If you can just bring them to the surface, sometimes you can really cut through sometimes some pain,
Yeah.
or maybe have some really good connecting conversations with people. It's just finding that way to mesh.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay. This could go in any direction, really. I don't know where you're going to take this one, but what would you say is the biggest donut you've ever taken? It could be personal, professional. What comes to mind for you?
So I got to go on a human trafficking rescue mission. And I got to, bottom line is we were able to rescue 20 girls out of human trafficking. Uh, it was a very long dream lead up. I remember I saw the movie Taken, and I had no idea what the whole human trafficking issue was before that movie, but once I saw that this actually happens to children and to adults too, frankly, once I saw this happen, I had to do something about it. I'm the type where if I see somebody getting really mistreated, I'm gonna figure out a way to help in some way, whether it's something a little more dramatic like this, or even just a kind word of encouragement to somebody. But in this case, I was fired up, and it took a long time. I reached out to tons and tons of different organizations saying, "Hey, I would love to volunteer. I have some background in things like self-defense and whatnot that could be useful." And most of the organizations just flat out ignored me, which was a little interesting to think about. Here's somebody that's willing to lay their life on the line for free, and they're ignoring it. But some of them said, "Hey, thanks, but no thanks. We already have full-time people." But then one organization in particular, I got to actually work with them, do the undercover raids, missions, what have you, and it was truly life-changing, both in heartbreaking but also uplifting ways to see the conditions that some of those children live in, but also uplifting to know that we got 20 out, and there are thousands and thousands who are being rescued by organizations like this every year, thankfully. But it also keeps me motivated to think what else can be done, because this is not a problem that's going away anytime soon.
What a donut to take. I mean, first of all, are you able to name the organization that you worked with? Are you allowed
I'm
to?
I'm not able to name it, unfortunately.
That's okay. I wasn't sure if you would or wouldn't be able to, but it sounds like you had a substantial role in the process. It was not clerical work. It was like really getting in there and risking a lot.
Yeah, yeah, we actually had to essentially pose as the typical customers that would frequent these places, and so we had to act just as slimy and awful as they do, but ultimately we were doing undercover work, and so we had to blend in until the time came to actually pull off the rescue portion of it. So yeah, it was a soul draining process for me to be acting like that type of person, and to say the certain things, and just even to be in that world. But I had to keep in mind, again, back to that, why am I doing this? What's the vision? What's the end goal here? That helped me to push on through. Plus, once we identified the children that we were targeting as rescues, I mean, that immediately became the motivation. Once you have a face to what you're trying to do, you'll do almost anything.
I don't know how long ago this happened for you. I'm not sure where you were in building your therapy skill set that you have now, but when you do something like what you did,
Mhm.
it is trauma for you
Yeah.
that you're going. I mean, you're going undercover, and but your body is still experiencing whatever it is you're putting it through. So how did you like? What did the process look like of coming out of that space? How did you cope with it in the aftermath?
Yeah, I thought during the trip that one point that I was going to have some sort of heart attack or nervous breakdown. So it was that intense. It was more. There was one moment I remember. There was a young lady that um, I was having a one-on-one conversation with, and she thought that I was the typical customer, and she thought that things were going to go in a physical manner. And as soon as I told her, no, this is actually not what's about to happen. Here's the real situation. The whole tension in the room changed, and frankly her demeanor changed. She was putting on an act just like we were as undercover, but those poor girls are having to put on an act because they have to produce a certain amount of money every night, and they figured out the character that they need to play to hit that dollar goal. But as soon as she realized that she wasn't going to have to lay her body down, it, tears started flowing out of her eyes. She immediately opened up to me about her past, what her family was like, how she got separated from them, and it. I had to hold it together because I couldn't fully break character, but it was a internal turmoil because of the story that she was telling me. So it really was secondhand trauma. And after I came out of that room, I had a group of teammates that was waiting on me to come out of there, And I literally had to just fall apart, lay down, sit down, just breathe. And it took a couple hours to really get back to a point where I was functional again. But after the trip, I had to journal. I had to do some therapy of my own. I told the stories that I was able to tell. I told the stories that later I told the stories that emotionally I wasn't able to tell early, but basically expressing the stuff, getting it out. That's what I tell people to do. You can't stuff it and leave it in there, because whatever doesn't come out of your mouth is going to come out of your body through unhealthy ways or behaviors. So I had to follow my own advice.
What an incredible story. And, I mean, I could ask so many follow-up questions about this, but let's talk about now. Are there any donuts that you're trying to take in your life right now, personally or professionally? What's happening in the moment for you?
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of writing a book. So the book is going to be on resilience, and I have never come close to even writing anything close to a book before. The biggest thing I've written is maybe an essay in school. So this is definitely a big old donut for me, and I don't know if I'll be able to pull it off or not, but I've got the reason why, and I've got the vision for how I want it to be and who I want it to impact, and so hopefully I'll just follow the process and carry that through.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to read it. I'm sure there are a lot of people who can't wait to read it and hear what you have to say about resilience. But knowing that you're keeping sort of the people on the other side in mind, to the people who are potential readers and consumers of this information, there may be people watching this video who have a donut of their own they'd like to take. Maybe they've started towards it, or maybe they haven't yet, but there's something they want to do and they're not sure how to move forward. Let's sprinkle some encouragement. And what would you say to those people who just aren't really sure what the next step is?
So if I could geek out for a minute as a therapist and talk about the brain. So whenever we have some sort of goal or endeavor that we're pursuing, our brain is naturally wired to go toward the negative. It's the brain's function is just to keep us alive, so it's going to focus on negative things just in case they might kill us. So our brain is not trying to keep us happy. It's literally just trying to keep our heart beating. So we got to know that, and know that the brain's trying to help us by drifting our thoughts toward the negative. And we also got to know that we can talk to our brain. You can tell your brain, hey, thank you for what you're trying to do by helping me focus on negatives, or at least be aware of the negatives, and I could take care of us, and we're going to focus on positive. So if you're trying to even get started on a goal, my guess is there are probably going to be times from your past when you failed, or maybe when something didn't go your way that you didn't have any control of. And so those thoughts might start intruding your process of starting this new goal. But I'll tell you this, there's two things I try to remind people of. If with your thoughts, if you can basically be a juggler, because if you watch a juggler, he's not worried about the ball he just caught. He's worried about the ball that's about to come into his hand. And that's how you got to be with it, really anything in life, as best you can, and especially with a goal, because all kinds of different outcomes and variables are going to happen that frankly you can't change anymore. You just got to move on and catch that next ball and keep going. But if a juggler starts taking his eye off of that one ball and puts his eye on the other one, the whole thing's going to fall apart. So it's another way of having a short memory. Just focus on where you are in the present moment and the next thing that you need to do.
Mm.
Another little metaphor I like to give, and this is actually a statistic. Squirrels squirrels lose 74% of the nuts that they bury in the ground. So I know it's sad, isn't it?
I'm just with you on this ride. They lose 74% of the nuts they bury in the ground. So what happened?
Exactly. So and what they're doing, that they're very diligent about burying them, but they bury them for so long that they forget where they are. And I think we do that a lot of times with our dreams and our goals. We bury them for too long, and we don't ever take that first step. We keep thinking that, well, I just need to wait for the right time. The right time is today. Like one of my favorite quotes, it's in the Bible. It's today is the day of salvation. So whatever it is you're thinking of doing, or whatever you think you need to actually take that step, today is that day to do it. Don't keep stuffing and burying your dreams for too long, because yeah, you'll lose track of them, or other things that seem urgent are going to take priority over them.
Don't be like the squirrels.
That's right.
Don't do it. Oh my gosh, I just never know where you're going to take an answer to one of these questions. This is amazing. Look, everybody needs to follow you. Everybody needs to know what you're saying and hear, some of the amazing advice that you give, and find out when your book is going to come out. So where can people follow you if they want to know more?
So the website is ruggedcounseling.com. It's Rugged Counseling on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever you want to find. But Rugged Counseling is the handle. But you could also search Trey Tucker, and I'm sure that would come up in a Google search as well.
Perfect. Well, everybody be sure to check out those resources. And if you liked this video, and I honestly don't know why you wouldn't have liked this amazing conversation with Trey, be sure to like and subscribe, because there's plenty of inspirational interviews still to come. In the meantime, thank you so much, Trey, for joining me, for having this conversation about opportunity and goals, and giving people something to think about if they're in pursuit of their own.
Melissa, thank you. I love your title. I was teasing you about it earlier, but you really do. You take a topic that could turn kind of corny, cheesy, or even too serious, and you make it fun. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Oh, thank you for that. Okay, everybody, you know what to do. Get inspiration, get donuts. Bye.